What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with the Wave Report number 34. We're going to go over a number of topics like we normally do. All right, we're going to start out with just giving a quick recap of one of the fights on the undercard of the Knockout Chaos card with Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou. All right, I was here live while we were watching Nick Ball against Ray Vargas, and I didn't do an actual recap video, but I do want to speak on it briefly. This was for Ray's WBC title up at featherweight, okay, at 126. And Ray hasn't really been that active. You know, we haven't seen Ray since he moved up to 130 for Ishaki Foster for his title up at 130. That was for a WBC title. So the WBC allowed him to take that fight against Ishaki Foster and retain his WBC title at 126 while taking that fight. Obviously, Ishaki Foster won the fight, and that was a year ago. And Ray decided to come back down to fight Nick Ball, the undefeated Nick Ball. I personally thought Nick Ball did enough to win. You know, it was an ugly fight. I didn't really necessarily enjoy the fight. Nick Ball had to make it really physical in order to make it competitive, but it worked in my opinion. You know, I think Ray, to me, from the opening round, and I said this prior to the fight, that Ray should not be fighting at 126 anymore. He's just too big to be fighting at that division at this point, you know. And I said this because, you know, he went from 122 to 126. Barely had much time at 126, but he was able to pick up a title there. And shortly after, he went to 130. Now, even though he lost at 130, he lost to one of the best fighters out there. Ishaki Foster picked up 2 good wins after beating Ray Vargas, who moved up. So it's not a bad loss. You know, I think he should have stayed at the weight because Ray is a guy, like, he carries some good power. He's great at attacking a body. You know, he could box pretty good, but he looks so weak in this fight. And this is part of the reason why he lost the fight. I mean, yes, he was landing clean punches, but he didn't have any power to it. You know, Nick Ball struggled with distance, you know, and he had to be very physical, tossing Ray to the ground, low blows, you know, headbutts, leading with his head at times. But he fought the fight he needed to fight in order to pick up the win. And even though it was an ugly fight and I didn't like some of the tactics of Nick in the fight, he did exactly what he needed to do. And he made Ray look weak. He was the aggressor in the fight. He scored 2 knockdowns. And I think overall Nick won the fight. You know, I think I only scored 1 round in the second half for Ray. Ray did pick up some rounds in the earlier rounds, at least in the first half of the fight. But as he tired down, his punches became weaker. He was less consistent. He just wasn't in control. He just overall didn't look strong. Like, I've been watching him for a minute. And, you know, at 122 and at 126 in the past, he looked stronger. In this fight here, you know, even in the Foster loss, he looked stronger. He needs to go to 130. You know, I know it ended up being a draw. I know most people are going to want a rematch, but I personally just think that Ray needs to go up to 130. I think he's just too big. You being a 6-footer fighting at 126 for this long and not being active, time to move up, man. You know, you already were inactive for 2 years from 2019 to 2021. It is time to move up, man. You are too big to be fighting at 130, draining yourself. And whether you fight Nick Ball in a rematch or if you fight, I don't know, Brandon Figueroa, you know, who is the interim champion, it's just not going to look good if you carry on at 126. Just my opinion. All right, so that's just my thoughts on the Ray Vargas fight. I do think Nick Ball did enough to win, especially with the knockdowns. All right. Which were 2 official knockdowns, by the way. You know, after seeing the replay, I think the first one was a little controversial because there was a throw before the punch, but there was a punch that landed before the knockdown. So I think that is an official knockdown for me. All right. Next topic, I just want to speak on Danny Jacobs and Edgar Berlanga, possibly. There's no official announcement of the fight. But we know the both of them are from Brooklyn. I saw Danny Jacobs posted on his Instagram of him back in the gym in preparation. I thought he was gonna retire, but I thought for some time he was gonna come back and return and fight the Jamal Charlo, but Jamal was out of the game for a while, so I thought there was gonna be a period even after the John Ryder loss that he was gonna return and fight Jamal Charlo. That never happened, so I know Edgar Berlanga has been looking and fishing for an opponent, and I think this is a good step up for Edgar. I think Edgar is a guy like if they were to throw him in there with a Canelo or David Benavidez or a David Morrell or even Jaime Munguia at this point, it would have been too soon. I'm just too unsure about Edgar, and I'm also worried about after I seen him in his last fight. I still think that he mentally, I question how mentally strong and stable he is. We know he's been suspended for the bite a couple of fights ago. I saw him throw a nasty elbow in his most recent fight that he won. He dominated. Just when things aren't going his way, he gets kind of frustrated. So I still have a lot of questions about him, but I do think that Danny Jacobs, even with him being out of the ring for a couple of years, I do think Danny Jacobs is a good test, and I think Danny still has a shot in winning because Edgar just hasn't looked that great since he stepped up in opposition, and even he's been dropped, he's been hurt, he's had struggled in certain fights that went to decision. I know he got a stoppage in his most recent fight, but even a 2-year inactive Danny Jacobs, older Danny Jacobs, still is the best to me out of everyone that's on Berlanga's resume, by far. So I think it's a good test for Edgar. And if he isn't careful, he could get outboxed. I see it being somewhat competitive depending on how Danny looks being 2 years out of the ring. I'm sure he's going to be a bit rusty. I'm assuming that this is going to be on the undercard of Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia because it's a Brooklyn fight, and I think this would be a perfect fight to put on the undercard since this fight is in the Barclays Center, So I don't have no problems with the fight, man. I know Danny's been inactive. I know he's a little older, but Danny, I think Danny talent is a better talent overall than Edgar. Just maybe, he's older, obviously, and inactive, but I think Danny on his best day would have beaten Edgar Berlanga, and I know Edgar is probably naturally bigger, but Danny can at very least give him some problems in the fight. All right, especially if he's able to slow the pace down. I actually think Danny won the John Ryder fight. I think he edged it 7 rounds to 5. To me, I think that's how I scored it. But I do think that he might have lost a fight to Gabe Rosado. So he got a gift win there. But I think he did beat John Ryder, which is the more impressive win to me. So it's not like he's completely out. I mean, the John Ryder fight was his last fight 2 years ago. All right, so I personally don't have a problem with the fight. All right. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. Jaron Ennis is rumored to be. Jaron Ennis is going to be making his return. He's rumored to be fighting Cody Crowley. Crowley is the IBF mandatory for Jaron Ennis's title, newly crowned title. And this is supposed to be on the undercard of Canelo and Munguia, which is cool. It's a good fight. I like Cody Crowley. He's a good fighter. He's been a contender at 147 for some time now. I like him overall. Like, I like the dude. He's come from a lot. He's had some tough fights. But I don't think he has the style that matches up with Ennis. Like, as far as rankings are concerned, this is a good matchup, like, on paper. But as far as the styles, I think Crowley is going to be dominated. I don't think he has the IQ or the athleticism that could match up with Jaron Ennis. It's a good win for Ennis because I believe Cody is probably still undefeated. Let me check real quick. Cody is probably still undefeated at this time. You know, he has some good wins, some solid wins on his resume and all that, but you know, at the end of the day, like BoxRec has him ranked as a number 7 guy at welterweight. You know, he did beat Abel Ramos. He beat Josecito Lopez. He beat that Abdul Kakarov guy who was a high ranking guy. You know, he has some solid wins. You know, I mean, Jerron Ennis doesn't have much better wins than him. But I do think Ennis does have better wins. And I also think that Ennis is overall the better talent, more power. Crowley, again, he's a southpaw fighter. He has a lot of heart. You know what I mean? But just overall, the ability between the two is just on just levels, you know. And I think if most people are sitting here asking for Ennis to fight Terrence Crawford, you already know that there's a mismatch when it comes to like overall talent, you know. And I think I just want to see Ennis in the ring. You know, I would love to see Ennis fight Bud. I would love to see Ennis fight Thurman if he, you know, had taken that fight. But 147 is right now, it's not that hot. Like Conor Benn moved up. Terrence Crawford is moving up. Virgil Ortiz moved up. Like, there's not many, you know, Errol Spence is, I don't even know what Errol is doing. You know what I mean? Like, Sean Porter retired. Keith Thurman moved up to 154. All the top dudes that was at 147 is pretty much going to be gone. You know, I think Mario Barrios would have been a little bit better of a fight for Jerron Ennis, but to be honest, there's no one at 147 that Ennis can beat that people are going to really, really respect. Like, there are certain fights that people are going to like. I think the Santion fight would be a little bit better than Cody Crowley right now. I think the Mario Barrios fight would have been a little bit better for Ennis too, but Cody Crowley is a mandatory, so this is why we're getting the fight. All right, not a bad fight. Just think there's levels between them. All right. Let's talk about Dillian Whyte real quick. He's been cleared to fight, but it's weird, right? I seen this. This is like over a week old. Like, this news, you know, this just came out over a week. He's been cleared by the Texas Commission to fight, whatever that means. Like, when I heard that, I was like, what kind of scam they got going on? Because the Texas Commission, I'm like, how did he even get licensed over there? You know, does Dillian Whyte, has he even fought in America? You know, has he even fought in Texas? Like, how's he licensed there? You know, what's up with the British Boxing Board of the British Boxing Board of Commission? Like, what's going on with them? You know, Board of Control. I'm sorry, I said Board of Commission. What's going on with them? Like, what's going on with UCAD and stuff? Like, what's going on with them? You know, it's like, how's he cleared over here? So supposedly, I guess the sample that was used in the failed drug test, I guess it was no good. All right, and this has been a whole year. You know, a whole year since he was supposed to fight Anthony Joshua. You got to remember, Robert Helenius was was the replacement for Dillian Whyte. Okay, so I guess whatever sample that was used, it was contaminated, and they're basically gonna throw that whole test away. You know, and he's gonna be clear to fight here. I really don't know what to think about that. I think it's gonna be a stain on Dillian Whyte's, you know, legacy or his career. Because, you know, I remember covering the last time he failed, and this was after the Oscar Rivas fight, you know, and this is when he took that little time off. It was a lot. I was defending, riding with Dillian Whyte. I am a fan of Dillian Whyte, but just overall, the amount of failed drug tests in his career, I think we're at least at 3 now. People are going to be left scratching their heads and questioning whether or not you're really a clean fighter or not. I think he did the right thing by being quiet because we haven't heard anything about him. I brought him up a couple times this past year because we never heard anything. Like once he failed the drug test, he was like kept in the dark. We didn't hear anything about him, you know? And I think that's the way to go. I think at this point, if you fail a drug test, you're better off just being quiet, not really going on social media often because people are just I think people are going to use your tweets and your interviews against you. Like Alicia Baumgartner, she's recently been through it. Connor Ben recently been through it. Dillian White kind of like laid really low, and no one was really talking about him, especially because all the other stuff has been going on in heavyweight division. He's been missing out on a lot of money. So I think if there was a mistake made with his drug tests, I think he should definitely take legal action. It would make him look better by taking legal action. But if this is one of those things where everything got swept under the rug and you just kind of want to keep your mouth shut and go on with your career, like he is going to be fighting next week. He's going to fight Christian Hammer March 17th in Ireland. So if there's any kind of wrongdoing, he might want to stay quiet and move on with his career. But, if there was a mistake made with his drug testing, he should take some sort of legal action because you missed out on a lot of money this past year. I mean, all these guys are fighting in Saudi Arabia on these big heavyweight cards, and you missed out on all of that action. So, I mean, with Dillian, man, I wish him best of luck, man. There's fights that still can be made. Again, maybe he can get a fight with a Gerald Miller or a Francis Ngannou. You never know, or a Triple D. There's guys that's still available, so he can definitely make a comeback. But the focus is on a lot of other fighters right now. So we'll see what happens from here. I know. Just to put it out there, because Christian Hammer is always that guy that people tune up against. But even like a Luis Ortiz, I know he's really, really old, but he's still in the game. He still wants to fight. If you're looking for someone just to shake off the cobwebs and stay active, fight that guy. Fight someone. That was a guy that you kind of was supposed to fight at some point too. Fight Otto Wallin, who was a guy that you were supposed to fight at one point. But I'm like, whatever. Just get back in the ring. And he's fighting Christian Hammer, but maybe after this fight, let's step it up a little bit because you're pretty much heading towards the end of your career and you want to make some money on your way out. All right. All right. The next topic. Let's talk about Naoya Inoue returning to fight Louis Nery. All right, this is going to be in May. It's May 6th, I believe. It's going to be a Japanese card. We got other fights on the card. This is a good fight. Now, this is a fight I like because this is a fight that I really wanted to see back in bantamweight, 118. Nery was a champion at that time. Okay, and there was two fights that we didn't get at 118 that I wanted to see at 118 with Inoue. And that was Nery is one of them, and John Rio Casimiro is the other. Everything else we got. But those are the two fights at 118 we didn't get. And I know Nery had lost to Brandon Figueroa at 122. I know he got stopped there. But it doesn't take anything away from him. I don't care if these guys lose because he's able to come back. He's picked up some wins. He had one of the best fights of the year last year against Havanesian. So I'm cool with this fight. Nery is still a top fighter at 122. And I'm good with this fight. It's not much left for me, at least for me, at 122. I think, if I don't know how long Naoya Inoue is planning to stay here. I think this is going to be his second title defense, like undisputed title defense. Let me just pull him up real quick. Yeah, so he fought Marlon Tapales, which was a great fight. That ended up being a very tough fight for Inoue. Fulton, he beat Fulton for undisputed. All right, and he's fighting Nery, and this will be his third fight there. So I don't know how much more is left at 122. You know, for me personally, you do got Sam Goodman. He's there. Casamaro's there. You know, I don't have as much interest in that fight right now, but you still have MJ. He's still around. You know, even though he lost to Palace, he's still around. But nothing really there for me right now that makes me want to say like, oh, you know, Inoue should stick around at 122. I would like for him to go to 126 as soon as possible. You know, he's already proven that he's the best there. I think the challenges at 126 are a lot more difficult. All right, but I like the fight. I think the only complaint I have is on the card, and maybe it's because they're mandatories. But Jason Maloney and Takuma Inoue, the brother of Naoya Inoue, is going to be on the cards, but they're fighting on separate fights, and both of those guys are champions at 118. I have recently said that I wanted to see some unification, you know, whether it's Nakatani or Inoue or Maloney, anyone at 118. I would like to see some unification matches down there, and you know, these guys are on the same card, but they're not fighting each other. You know, I know Takuma just fought. So I'm glad that he's fighting again, and the opponents are good for both fights. But I would have rather to see a unification, you know. But maybe it's because there's some mandatory obligations there. That's the only complaint I have on this card. But it's forming up and shaping up to be a good card, and you know I should be around to be able to cover the fight. I know it's gonna be like early in the morning here. It's probably gonna be a card where I have to be up at like 3 in the morning, but you know, I do get on here and do these live commentaries for these kind of cards, all right? So be on the lookout, and I'll definitely do a breakdown at some point. All right, let's move on to the next topic. All right, real quick, just want to make a note. Luis Alberto Lopez, who's just defending his title at 126, says he wants Oscar Valdez against Liam Wilson winner. Valdez is going to be fighting Wilson. Wilson is the guy that was able to knock down Emmanuel Navarrete in a fight. It was a good fight. It was a close fight. It was competitive. Navarrete did end up finishing him. You know, Navarrete has those fights when he doesn't start off too good. That fight was right before the Valdez-Navarrete fight. But Valdez is going to be fighting Wilson. And Lopez says he wants to go up and fight them. Now, listen, I don't have a problem with that fight if that were to go down. But again, this is my complaint. I just did a featherweight breakdown. And basically, all these guys at featherweight, they basically pick up a title, maybe have a couple of fights, and then they'll move up to 130, you know? None of the fighters there ever unify, you know, and it sucks. But there's so many fights that I want to see with champions at 126, and they just don't fight each other, you know? Even when guys are on the same... they are on the same platform fighting or the same promoter. Is just they just don't fight each other, you know. So Lopez is already talking about moving up, and I understand, you know, Valdez is he's definitely a name, but I would have loved to see him fight, you know, Robesi Ramirez or Espinoza, you know, or you know, whoever else is champion down at 126. You got Raymond Ford now. That would have been a good fight. There's so many good fights there, but none of the best fighters fighting each other. You know, Ray Vargas just fought. Like I just said, you know, I'm hoping he's looking to move up. But there are other fights that could be made, but it seems like everybody's gonna just stop at 126, pick up a title, have a defense or two, and then move up. Lee Wood just moved up, and they just fought. Raymond Ford just fought for that and won that vacant title. All right. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Moving on to the next topic. Now, I'm gonna end this video. Conor Ben, you know, had a recent face-off with Manny Pacquiao. There's no official anything as far as them fighting each other, you know. But I know Manny still wants to fight, you know. And then you got Mike Tyson. He's fighting Jake Paul. And then we got the worst of it, which I just saw today. Michael Spinks. He's 67, I believe. All right, Michael Spinks is going to be fighting in celebrity boxing against Buster Douglas. And Buster Douglas is somewhere in his 60s as well. Just to make this clear, Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, I don't like it, but it's a difference. Like, even Manny Pacquiao against Conor Benn, really not that bad. You know, really not that bad. Like, if Floyd was to decide to come back and fight maybe not a top tier welterweight, but if he were to fight a Cody Crowley, you know, someone down there that's like not super elite, but someone good, I wouldn't, Mario Barrios, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have a problem with it. So Manny's doing it. If Manny wants to do it, there are people that are still going to believe that Manny can beat him, especially because Conor's coming off a not so good performance. So whatever, Manny want to make his money still, whatever, you know what I mean? Same thing with Mike and Jake Paul. Like, look, like Conor is really already the guy to me that's just looking for the big names. Conor is not chasing titles. Let's just make that clear. We all understand that, right? Conor Benn is not here to chase titles. He's here to make any kind of fight that's going to make him a lot of money. All right, so his legacy is not about that. We know that since he was willing to jump up from 147 to fight Chris Eubank. All right, it's all about the names. It's all about the big fights. So I don't care. Jake Paul, we already know who he is. He's a YouTuber. He can fight. He can fight. And that's one thing. I don't hate on Jake. He can fight. Not only can he fight, but it is what it is. Like, what he's doing, he's not trying to be a top contender. When Morris Breedis was calling him out, I was like, he's not going to fight you, bro. He's not here for you. He's going to knock out. He's going to pad up his resume. Same thing with Fury. What's his name? Tommy Fury. These guys know what it is. These guys are not here to become all-time greats. So I'm cool with that. But Jake Paul against Iron Mike, I don't think Mike is going to win. I don't care how many times they show these videos of him hitting the mitts and training, and he looks insane. Like, listen, Mike is 57 years old. He's insanely athletic. He's always been. So he's always going to look good at those moments. If you rewatch the Roy Jones fight, you can see that he really didn't look that good. Jake Paul, in his most recent fight, the one he scored on the first round knockdown against some guy, he was moving. He was doing a whole lot of movement in that fight. And I think at that point, he was just preparing for Mike. Mike don't have the legs to just be following this guy and chasing this guy for a long time. All right. I'm expecting Jake Paul to win. Hopefully it's just a exhibition. No one's going too hard. I hope Mike doesn't end up. I know it's Mike, y'all. Mike is my favorite all-time fighter. He's the reason why I love boxing. But I have to be realistic. He's 57 years old. He didn't look good against Roy Jones. He looks good for his age, yes. Well, overall, him fighting a younger guy that's going to move a lot, and I just don't think it's going to look good for Mike. I don't know how serious they're taking this fight, but Mike, yeah, if you're standing right there in front of him, and if he has you against the ropes or you're in a corner, of course, Mike is going to knock you out. But Jake is not going to let him he's not going to let him do it. He's going against he's already fought Anderson Silva. He's fought basketball players. He fought a bunch of washed up MMA guys. Jake Paul is just padding his resume. All right? And he's making money while doing it. So I don't have no hate on him. I just hope that Mike is getting cut a good check for this fight. That's it. That's my only thing when it comes to this fight. I hope Mike is getting paid at least $10 million to get in this fight, and that's it. But Michael Spinks against Buster Douglas should find a way to shut that down. I'm sure I don't know. I know the guys probably need the money. Maybe they need the money. Michael Spinks has not boxed since 1988. When Mike Tyson knocked him out, that was it. That was it. Some people that's watching this video probably wasn't even born yet. All right. I wasn't old enough to watch it live. So this is a ridiculous fight. I met Michael Spinks. There's no disrespect. I met him 2 years ago. You know, gentlemen. We took a picture together. I got to talk to him for a second. He hasn't fought since 1988, man. Like, your last fight was in the 80s. Out of all of the comeback older guy fights, I think Michael Spinks might be the worst one. Even Buster Douglas is bad. Buster Douglas haven't fought in a really long time. Recently, we had James Toney fighting Donovan Razor Ruddock. Yeah, there were two old guys, but there's old guys that still like recently kind of fought. You know, we got Mike Tyson against Roy Jones again. Really older guys, but Roy kind of still fought for a while, and Mike is a freakish athletic guy, so I get it. But Michael Spinks has not fought since 1988 when he got knocked out by Mike Tyson. Like, what are we doing? He's 67 years old, man. He's really old. And Douglas is in his 60s too. Since this is a whole level beyond what Floyd, what Manny and Mike Tyson and Razor Ruddock and James Toney, this is a step older than that. These guys are in their 50s. These guys are a whole another 10 years and inactive on top of that. So I really hate this one. I really hope no one gets hurt. Especially, Michael Spinks, because he's much smaller and he just hasn't fought in a much longer time. So I hate this fight. A guy that's doing the celebrity boxing, I hope someone shuts this shit down. Because I know we complain about a lot of these older guys fighting, but I think this might be by far the worst. Like, Michael Spinks is in no condition to be boxing in 2024. 2024. How many years is that? It's over 30 years. If I got my math right. It's like 35 years or something like that. That's crazy. He hasn't fought in 35 years. Like, no. What are we doing? Like, someone got to be able to come in and say, this is too much. I don't know what these guys' situation is financially. So if it is really because they need to get paid, I understand desperation, but if you were fighting somewhere in between and staying in shape, then yeah, but you retired after you lost. He was devastated. Now you got to come back and fight in 2024? It's crazy. What are we doing? I don't know. Like even with Evander, Evander obviously is in great physical shape, right? Well, we saw what happened when he fought the Brazilian MMA fighter, right? Got knocked out easily, right away. Like he's fit. He looks good. Evander looks good, but it's over. I think it should be over for Mike too, but just because you're still fit and still athletic and can still like beat up most people, it doesn't mean that you should be fighting in a professional fight. Even for exhibitions, sometimes like you gotta hang it up. All right. So that's my whole view on all of this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, please. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Y'all have a good day. Peace.